So first, could you please state your name and your career?
So my name is Maurice Alcantara, and I'm an immunologist. So essentially, what I'm doing is I work as a postdoctoral scientist at the moment, and I'm helping test new drug and drug combinations in kidney cancer and also prostate cancers and bladder cancers.
Mhm. So when you were in high school, did you focus on STEM studies?
In high school, yes, mostly because I was drawn to the STEM subjects because they were the most interesting. So science was a favorite of mine, but that doesn't mean I didn't try other subjects. So I tried, um, woodworking, and I tried arts, a lot of art subject, um, and it just didn't interest me. So I tended to focus more on the STEM subjects.
Mhm. So when you were in high school and you focused on like STEM studies, what kinds of activities, classes did you do?
So, um, I don't know how it is here in the United States. I studied and I grew up in Australia, and we had, for example, we had our core subjects. So that was, maths, science, and then we could do a lot of different extracurricular activities. So we could pick, I think, a few extracurricular activities. And during high school, I actually picked to do an extra advanced biology and psychology subjects. Um, not because of anything other than they were the subjects that was the most interesting to me, and because the teachers were so good. So I focused on psychology. I also did sports science, which I absolutely loved, and biology. So those were like my three favorite subjects in high school.
And would you say like doing a lot of like STEM activities in high school like really helped you know that you wanted to go into this career path later on?
That's really hard to say because I think, okay, so I had like the foundation of being really interested in STEM because I think you really need that because it's a really hard career and it's a long career path. It's not something that's linear for a lot of people. It's not, for example, um, even being like a cancer research scientist, everybody comes into the field from so many different backgrounds. So, for example, I did immunology, my PhD, but then I did like a sort of a master's degree in molecular biology. But then during my undergrad, I did like a pre med course. So that was my path. But I know some of my colleagues, they have such different backgrounds. Like one did chemical engineering, and then another one had no science background and she switched and did a PhD. Um, so I think to answer your question, I think that you really have to have a foundation of interest, and then you sort of everybody just takes all your experiences, and it no matter what it really helps in whatever career you're doing. I don't really believe that you need a specific pathway to become this sort of or go into this sort of career, but every little experience you get, it does really help. And for me personally, it did help because it trained me in just not what to think, but in how to think as a scientist. Because as a scientist, you just really need to always question the status quo, always have at the back of your mind, um, question what's happening and really find the gaps. So that's what like my path really showed me how to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So more onto college. What did you major in when you were in college and why?
So I did biomedical science. I think we did a lot of, so I think it's a little bit different in Australia. Um, from what I've heard because in Australia we have it's very specific. So, for example, if you do a biomedical degree, you can just choose from all these science subjects. We don't really have a minor and major. We don't get to choose. So it was all just science subjects like human physiology, chemistry, a lot of anatomy, and a lot of biology. So that was all of the subjects. We didn't get to choose any extracurricular subjects, so it was mostly just studying very science-based subjects. So it was very focused. Um, yeah.
And so when you were in college, what kinds of activities did you participate in? And I was also wondering if you conducted research.
Yes, we did conduct research. So we have like what's called an honors year, and it's sort of like a master's. So you do your 4 years of a science degree, and then because we were doing a lot of pre-med subjects, there was two pathways. Some of the kids that wanted to do medicine then went on to do medicine, and then the other people either, you either after 4 years learn that you don't like it, or you're interested in research. And so we do an extra for the kids that were interested in research. We did an extra year of intensive research. I think it was 9 months, but it was really intense. So we were given, you had to get the grades to get into the honors year that they call it, which is just like a master's degree, but like condensed into 9 months. And now that I look back on it, I think, oh my gosh, that was really crazy because we had to pull really crazy hours to complete the research projects. So um, so basically, 9 months we were given these projects, and we had to learn all of the techniques, and then write like a big thesis, and then have to present the thesis and get graded on it. And then that was a pathway to a PhD degree. If the kids that, well, the students that did well would then get scholarships, and then the students that didn't do well, well, then they could come back and redo their thesis and stuff. So that was what I did, and it was a huge learning curve, but it really helped because it helped train you um, in what a PhD was going to be like. I obviously condensed in 9 months. I really enjoyed that because I'm not sure if you guys have a year like that during your undergraduate year. Do you guys have something like that?
Not really. It's just like the 4 years, and like research is like extracurricular. It's like not really
Oh,
just a year of it.
so it's something that you have to do in your spare time.
Yeah.
Okay. On top of your on top of your studies already, then you have to do it in your spare time. And so how do people get time to publish papers? Because publishing papers is so important.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I've talked to a few other scientists in the US, and like they just told me like I did my classes, and then like whenever I had free time I worked with my professor. But usually when you're undergrad, you don't really publish research on your own. You just help the professor, but you do get your name written like as a co-author, I think.
okay, that's perfect. That's what I did too. I think um, during my honors year, I published 3 papers, which was so much fun um, with my professor, who was great, and he was like the reason why I decided to do research, because I was like, this is so much fun. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. So the one thing I would say would be like, it's people don't tell you how important publishing papers is and getting your name out there. Um, I was lucky; I had a really good mentor who was like, having all these papers under your name would look really good in your career, and having papers early on still right now is paying dividends for me. So it's been really helpful, that research. Yeah.
Hmm. So after your research year, did you go onto a master's program, or did you do like a PhD program?
I did a PhD program right away, only because doing that. honors year and then doing another 2 years master's and then a PhD, I felt was a lot already. So I thought, because we're allowed to do um, the honors year and straight into a PhD, I just did that.
Mhm. So, what did the process to get into a PhD program look like? And did you also have advisors and mentors guiding you through the process?
So the process for us is we go into the honors year and then we publish papers and then we write a thesis and get graded and then we then go straight into PhD programs. Um, and no, I didn't have mentors. I wish I did. As I said, I had my research, my undergraduate research mentor, and I really liked him. He was great. He was wonderful. He was so supportive, and I think everybody needs a good mentor. Like the path to any career is it's not a straight path. So I think if you have someone to guide you, that's so important. That will go a long way. Like there are so many pitfalls, there's so many mistakes you can make, and anybody who can help guide that process is so important. But unfortunately, like I wanted to stay with him for my PhD and actually spoke to him, but unfortunately, he switched college or university. We call it university. Um, when I the year that I wanted to go into a PhD program, and so I couldn't follow him because he was switching states, and I just wasn't prepared to do that. And so I had to find another lab, which in itself can be very difficult. You know, it's hard to commit to working 5 or 6 years under someone that you don't know. And so, no, I didn't really have a mentor, which was challenging for me. But for anybody else, I would suggest finding someone who's been through the process that you want to go through, and someone who's willing to share their experiences and learn from them because it's so important. I wish I had known so many things going in. Like I would have been so much more picky in the advisors that I took on. You know, the when you're young, there's so much you don't know, so you sort of go in there blindly, right? And as we
Mhm.
know, a lot of PhD students they go through a lot of challenges. And that's mostly because we have a lack of mentors and mentorship and guidance. So we sort of have to figure it out for ourselves. So it takes us a lot longer.
Mhm.
So mentorship, yeah, is very important. Yeah.
So, as a PhD student, just like what did the program look like and what did an average day look like for you?
So the program for us looked like, okay, so in the first year, we had to do a lot of training and we had to go to classes. So, for example, I did a PhD in immunology. I had to go to immunology classes, and then I had to do a lot of training. So, PhDs generally they have to learn so many techniques that are new to them, and you constantly have to learn. So that was a lot of learning, and it's so I would go maybe to classes 20 hours a week in the beginning, and then we would have meetings every week, um, and then we would have to present our results. But the rest of the time, we were learning techniques in the first year or two, and then starting in the lab with a lot of experiments. And then going forward, like in the next 2 or 3 years, that changed to as you become more proficient in things and as you have more knowledge, you really don't have to do classes anymore, and it's very lab based. And so a typical day with the first year would be like a lot of reading, attending classes, and then learning techniques. But then it switched in the second year to the end of your PhD to a lot of lab based and really a lot of meetings with your advisors and with your committee, and then presenting your work to a lot of conferences. And so very lab based, very hands on work in um, your second year onwards.
Mhm. So, what kinds of research did you conduct as a PhD student in the immunology field?
Okay, so my advisors, I had a few advisors, and one of them was a physician, and so he had a lot of patients with cancer. And so one part of my PhD project was getting all these patient samples and really digging in deep and characterizing any immune alterations and tracking them in these different patients. Because as we know, as we know now, the immune system is so important in responses to cancer. And we were trying to find biomarkers. That was the aim. Um, to try to figure out whether patients that responded to various types of therapy had some biomarkers that we could pinpoint that would allow us to really figure out like um, when or at what point a patient was going to respond or not respond to the various types of therapy. So that was one part. And then another one of my advisor was really interested in T cells, and T cells are one of the main responders to any injury, any immune attack within your body, cancers, whatever it is. T cells are one of the main mediators. Of course, they function within the largest system of the immune system, but they're really important. And within the specific subset of T cells, there's so many different subsets, right? And so he was really interested in this newly discovered set of T cells. So the other part of my PhD was really trying to figure out how that newly discovered subset of T cells was important for cancer. I'm still really interested in those T cells because they were pretty cool. They've only been discovered in the last 20 years, which still blows my mind because there's still so much we don't know. And they perform so many functions, and people think that they're so important. And there's now a lot of studies, and I mean, a lot of research trying to figure out how we can use these T cells in cancer therapies. So that was my research, like two parts.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I was also wondering, after graduation, what are the different paths a PhD student can take in terms of a career like post-graduation, and what career path did you choose?
So there's a few career paths you can choose. I think it depends on what you're interested in. So I decided to do more training, so that's why I did a postdoc. And that that's you don't have to do that. I just want to make it clear, like to everybody, you can go ahead and go. So we do get paid a salary, but you can make a. There's two choices you can do, right? If you really love research, what I would say is by the time you finish your PhD, you sort of you will know what you're interested in. So if you're the type of person who thinks, okay, I want to learn a little bit more and train a little bit more, I think there's so much more I can learn, I can try to understand, then I would suggest doing a postdoc. And you don't have to do a postdoc in the same country because I move countries because Australia is great, but America is very enterprising, and we have some of the best research being conducted here. So I was like, well, then I need to learn from some of the best, and I want to do it in immunology, and so that's why I decided to do a postdoc. There's still so much I can learn and so much that I need to be able to experience to be able to do my part in what I want to do. And so that's why I'm doing a postdoc. So right now, I chose that pathway. You get paid a salary and you train under independent, more senior scientists. And then you can bring in your own grant money, but you don't have to. And you sort of, this is the step to building your own career. So you can form your own collaborations, really hone in on the things that you want to develop. So, for example, for me, I really wanted to do more cancer research, but I wanted to do it in a setting where I would have the ability to, if one day I'd have an interesting discovery, I would be able to develop my own drugs. And so that's why I'm training under a kidney cancer physician and also PI, which is just PI just means a principal investigator, so an established scientist who has been able to develop his own drugs, and so I'm helping them test drugs so that it can go into clinical trials. So that for me is I did that because that's the path I want to take in the future. But then for other people, if you want to start making money right away, some of my friends have gone straight into industry and you get paid a lot of money. Um, but that path is a little bit different again. So you can do so many things. There's a lot of drug development, there's a lot of pharmaceutical companies. You can even, they have consultants, scientists can be consultants, right? And there's a lot of scientists proficient at writing and communicating. So a lot of people have, science communication jobs, which has been a very big thing in the last few years. Especially with with COVID, right? We need scientists who are at the forefront and have the ability to communicate with the public about what we're actually doing. So that's another pathway you can take. I've also spoken to a lot of people that have done PhDs and they've gone into science policy. So that has to be based in Washington. But essentially, what you do is that you help guide policymakers in how we can, in the future, help support science and science programs for the whole country. So there's so many pathways, but I guess there's two, and they're kind of divergent. I guess you can do more training, do a postdoc, so just more training, and then really hone your skills, or you can go straight and start working. And but within that field, there's so many different things that you can do. So there's so many options. Science, I think, because it's so broad, it can be overwhelming to figure out. Okay, like what we're not like. For example, we're not like teachers or nurses. The path is very clear. But science is, you have so many skills that are transferable that you can get paid a lot of money for the skills that you do have. Even if you don't want to be, even if you don't want to be a scientist in the lab, you can go into, as I said, in a lot of companies, become consultants, science communicators. You can work in Washington and help policymakers. And I know someone personally who is doing that and is really enjoying her field. um, you can help develop new treatments, not in the setting of research, but in the pharmaceutical industry, um, there is more focused. But scientists get paid a lot of money to do that, and I know a lot of my friends personally have chosen that pathway, and they're enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
So
there's so
as
many options.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. So as a postdoc doing research in cancer, what does an average day look like for you?
An average day would be a lot of reading and experiments. So I go in to the lab. I would usually check my to-do list because experiments take a long time, right? So, for example, I do a lot of animal studies. To be able to have an animal study finished in 2 months, I have to have it prepped and ready 2 months before. Because we have a lot of, obviously, we can't test our drugs in humans, right? We have to have
Mhm.
like a setting in which we can test them before we can push them onto patients. So that's a lot of my experiments, doing them in animals. And so it's a lot of planning. And so I would go in, figure out what I need to do for the day, and then it's a lot of experiments, very hands-on in the lab, in the animal room, um, and testing drugs, and then analyzing data, then presenting, having meetings with people who advise me. So I have two mentors, and then I have my own lab. So a lot of meetings presenting data. So essentially, it's a lot of on the bench, working, and then analyzing your data, and then presenting your work. I think what people don't realize is in research, there's a lot of speaking to people. I think that's one thing that was really hard for me because I enjoy being by myself in the lab, but then you throw scientists and you have to speak to so many people. It took me a long time to actually enjoy the process of presenting. So that's one thing I would really suggest, like throw yourself out there and speak to a lot of people, because if you want a career in science, you're going to have to speak to a lot of people and you have to be comfortable very early on, which I did not realize. So Because you see scientists and they're always alone on the bench, but that's just one side of the job. The other part of the job is being able to, to get grant funding, to get people to support your research, you really have to be able to tell them about it. And it's a lot of presenting.
Mm-hmm. So, what is your favorite part of your job?
I think my favorite part would be being able to come up with ideas. That's a lot of fun for me. Reading papers and then putting information together and getting excited about something new. That's my favorite part. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. I think a lot of people who are in the field who have had that moment where they're so excited about a topic that, they're willing to put in the hard work. Um, that's the exciting bit. Like when you're excited about finding something, that's what I love. Like when I'm reading something and I think of an idea and I just like want to chase that idea and figure out how it fits into my field. Yeah, that's the most exciting bit. And also, this is one thing that I guess it's not directly related to science, but being able to meet so many people, because you talk to so many different types of people that I guess in any other career you might not be exposed to, right? So like I'm talking to you, which is amazing. Like normally I probably wouldn't have the chance to speak to you, or like some of my older advisors. Usually I would have nothing in common with them, but science really connects us to people that we generally wouldn't have that many overlap with. So that's what I like about science,
Mm-hmm.
those two things. Being able to like, yeah, it's very exciting to chase something that you're interested in, and it's also exciting to be able to meet so many cool people.
Mm-hmm. And I was also wondering, how can high schoolers engage in the field of biology and science research in general?
I would say research, like look up things that you're interested in, and then approach people, volunteer, do internships. I would say that. Speak to people about it and um, get as much exposure as you can to people who are doing the work, and then make connections and network. That would be the best way. And visit labs. I think a lot of people would be very interested if very early on students want to visit labs and they take an interest in the work that they're doing. Most people would love that if you take an interest. And so that's like one way to gain new connections and expose yourself to the field.
Mm-hmm.
Really, very early on, start to really um, network yourself, like um, make connections in the field and be able to like gain exposure. So I would say yeah, just go out there, reach out to people, ask them what they're doing, like what you're doing, ask them if they have labs, if you can visit labs, things like that. Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. And then one more question. Do you have a final piece of advice for aspiring scientists?
Ooh, I think okay, I would have two actually. Number one, is like follow your interest, whatever you're interested in, follow it, because can be very challenging and there is a lot of failures um, in science in the field itself. And I find that if you're not interested in a topic, it's very hard to keep going during the hard times. So whatever you're interested in. So um, for example, like if you're interested in figuring out um, what what the immune system is, how it's important, then follow that path. If you're
Mm-hmm.
interested in, space exploration, follow that path. Because you really have to have a great interest in it. I've seen some students that just want to have the degrees under their belt, and it's not enough to motivate you through the long road. So that would be the main thing I would say. Make sure it's something you're really interested in, whatever you're doing. And the second thing is make sure you take care of your physical health, because this is something that I struggled with during my studies, because it's such a long road. I would be like, I'll just won't eat lunch so I can do more work, or I just won't sleep so I can do more work. And I ended up getting really sick during my PhD because I was like, you can't do that for too long. So I would say take care of yourself as well because it's a marathon, and you need to be really healthy to be able to function well in this field because
Mhm.
it's not only mentally draining, it's actually very physical as well because we spend a lot of time physically doing things. So yeah, so the first one is make sure you're interested in it and take care of yourself physically and mentally.
Yeah, thank you so much for these pieces of advice and sharing your career and your journey.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so nice to meet you. I hope you have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.